Hello once again. So it's Benny as usual. So today I will be looking on like some basics about how you can analyze and manage the network. So with the help of this book, the Linux basics for hackers. So that's what you'll be looking on. For example, as the hacker, you might need to connect to your target, but your IP is kind of hidden, or redirect them to your system, their DNS to your system. So that's what you are going to see today. So without wasting the time, then open the terminal and then we see some basic command. So the first one is Ifconfig. So Ifconfig, what it does, it shows the network interface and their details. You see, we have this Eth0, which is for wired connection. This is wired card. We have localhost, which is for local, which is like computer talking to itself. We have also for wireless LAN, which for the Wi-Fi network or wireless. So you see, for example, I'm connected to this Wi-Fi and you can see I'm getting this IP address which is representing my device on this network. We have the network mask, which is kind of like a blueprint showing us like, oh, which part is for the network, which part is for the host. And also we have the broadcast IP, which is used for broadcasting messages to other devices on the network, like when you want to send the message to all devices. And you can see its MAC address here of this card. Yeah, that's in other words the quick way to know some information about your network. Yeah, and another command we have here, it's called Iwconfig, which is kind of similar with Ifconfig, but it's different. Iwconfig, is it correct? Yeah, Iwconfig, you can see it only shows information about wireless adapters. You can see, for example, on Eth0 we don't have any wireless extension. This thing cannot support wireless. But when we reach to WLAN 0, you see it's going to show us our access point name, the mode, the frequency, and then access point MAC address. Yeah, and another quick commands, let me go back to the book so we don't lose the track. So another thing we are going to see is changing your network information, so which includes like your IP address, your MAC address, changing your DNS resolvers, yeah, and many. So that's what you are going to see. You are going to start from how you can change your IP. You're probably wondering, oh, how comes do I need to change my IP? Let me tell you something. So some system, they might be using like whitelisted IPs. They're like IPs which are allowed to access those systems. So you might need to put your IP or to spoof your IP to the one which are like whitelisted, right? So for example, let's say we want to change our IP from this one 228. Let's say this 228, it's not on whitelist, but you know, like 229, it's on the whitelist. How can you do that? It's kind of simple. Let's do that real quick. You see, my current IP is this and the broadcast, so let's do that. It's easy. We're going to use Ifconfig, and then you put the interface. Our interface want to change the IP. You remember it's WLAN 0, right? And then the new IP we want to give it to, right? Before let me just use IPA because I'm not remembering the network structure. So let me use Ifconfig, Ifconfig, and then the interface is this WLAN for the wireless network, WLAN 0, and then let me take this current IP and then I will just change one number. Let's say this IP which have the host 228, it's not on whitelist to access the system, but 229 it's on whitelist, it's allowed. So let's give that. Okay, if I execute that and then I check for my IP, you see, oh, the IP is changed, but you see that we have the different network. You see, our network before was this, but now we have this subnet. So we can also change the network mask, because this 8, I think it's something like 255.0.0.0, but before we had like 255.255.0. So means that we need to orient to the correct subnet. It's kinda easy also. It's simple. The way we can do that, we also need to use Ifconfig. But you guys, when you be running Ifconfig and trying to change, you might see some error like permission. Try to use like sudo. So we say Ifconfig and then we put the adapter we want to deal with, WLAN 0, and then let me copy this IP we gave, right? And then we have to say the network mask. We want to set the new network mask. Network mask, is it network mask or it's netmask? Because that command looks bigger than what I know. It's netmask. And then the netmask, we want to give it 255, that's the network, another network, and the host. And also we might need to change the broadcast IP, right? You remember here our broadcast IP was this. We want to return it to the correct one, but I think here we have to say broadcast, right? And then you execute that. When we check again with IPA, you see now we are correct subnet. The broadcast IP is kinda good, right? So now we are on the whitelist. Maybe we can access some systems we're restricted to. And also another thing you can try to change as the hacker, it's MAC address, so which is kinda like the hardware address. So in most cases, like some Wi-Fi routers, some Wi-Fi, in other words, they might be having like a table of filtered MAC address, which are like devices which are allowed to use that network, that Wi-Fi. So you as the hacker, whatever, and you are trying to connect, but you are not allowed. You can spoof your MAC address to be the one who is allowed. Same on the IP scenario, but it's kinda different. Let's first check again if, let me use IP. It's kinda simple and decorative. So you see, maybe I want to change the MAC address of this. No, let's use this guy, right? Let me use this guy, this WLAN 0. You see, this guy have this MAC address, but this MAC address might be not, it's kinda blocked, but I want to give like the new one which is not blocked, right? The way I can do that, it's simple, and you can see this interface. It's in state app. The first thing you can do is say Ifconfig, and then the adapter you want to deal with is WLAN 0, and then you have to put it down so that you can change the hardware address. And then later on you can after you change the state down from up to down, you can just say new hardware address. Maybe let me just copy this and I change some numbers for like say hardware, the new MAC address you want to give it. Let me maybe change this to 5, 6, whatever, and maybe this one to D. Yeah, you may need to down the interface. Oh, I thought it was done. Okay, let's check the state again. Yeah, you see now it's done. Yeah, now you see it's working, and now you know that you cannot change the MAC address when the interface is up. When you check to see if it's changed, you see we had this before and we changed our MAC address to this. Let's check IP all, and then you see now we have the new MAC address, which is good. Now we are ready to go. Okay, so and another thing, let's see, so it's what it talks about. What after that? Yeah, we have assigning new IP address from DHCP server. So the Linux has this dynamic host configuration protocol which can operate on this server. It runs in background, so it's called DHCPD. The daemon is process which is running in the background, right? So in other words, this DHCP server is responsible for assigning devices IPs automatically. When they reach on the network, they are going to say to the DHCP server, it says like, oh hey, I want an address, and then the DHCP server gives the address, right? So I think here we're going to say we can use DHCP client to request the server the new IP. It's kind of simple and straightforward. So you know that we have DHCP server, so that you as the guy who requesting the new IP, you have to do what? DHCP client. So you can use DHC, is it DHC client, and then the interface you want to ask the new IP for. Yeah, if I try again, they're going to say, oh, you guys, we already gave you the IP address and you are requesting for another. So you see the first command we received the IP, and then when you try again, the server says, oh, you coming again, there is no IP for you, get out of here. Yeah, that's it. So and another thing, let's see which thing we have after this. It's manipulating domain name system. So the hacker can find treasure trove of information on the target in its domain name system. So this DNS is critical component of the internet. Although it's designed for translating domain names to the IP address, hackers can use it to gather information on the target. That's what you are going to see. We can examine DNS records by dig. Yeah, so this DNS, what it does, it's going to take domain names like google.com and translate to the IP address where you can find that server you want to connect to, in other words. So in Linux we have this command called dig, which can help us to examine some DNS records. So for example, we have different DNS records like A records. These A records are points domain name to IP version 4 server's address, and we have 4A records which points to the IPv6. We have MX for mail exchange. We have CNAME, which is for alias. Maybe Google is AKA, is also known as search.com, and we have name servers, yeah, and many others. So we can use dig to see those DNS records. For example, let me say I want to know some A records of ighe.com. I want to know where is the address of ighe.com. ighe.com is domain name, but I want to know yeah, the actual server IP. It's easy. I can say dig ighere.com, that's the random, and make sure I have whatever ighere.com. You see, now I sent the query to the server, to the resolver, and then the resolver says, oh, you can find ighere.com on this IP address. You see, I was asking for a record, and it's always going to return IP version 4. Means that ighere.com, you can find it on either this server to this or this thing. And you see the resolver I'm using, it's this one, which is like from my router, in other words, but we are going to say we can put the actual server here, maybe like Google DNS server or Cloudflare one. So let's say, for example, I want to examine their mail exchange records. You see that ighere.com, they might be using these SMTP servers, ISM, whatever. You see, if I check for the name servers they are using to translate ighere.com, you see they are telling us, oh, it's Cloudflare, and a record, they have a record pointing there, a record pointing there to there to there, right? So, and another command we can look after, it's how you can change your DNS server. How can we change this server responsible for answering our questions to like anyone we know? So in Linux we have this file called etc resolve.conf, which serves like configurations for name servers or DNS servers. So the way we can do that, it's simple. We can go there and then we edit it. etc resolve.conf, right? Yeah, when you reach there, you see we have this name server, right? But we can change it to the Google public DNS server, which is 8.8. and then when I save this configuration, so what, let me put yes, okay, and then when I dig again, yeah, you see now we are using this Google public DNS server through this port for DNS, and we are using the UDP, right? And there is another easiest way. Maybe we can change. Let's change from the Google and we use the Cloudflare with a different option to change. We can echo. You remember, like echo is to display something. We want to display name server, and then we want to display this. This is the IP of Cloudflare's DNS server, and then you remember this thing says write. We want to write it into the etc host. No, etc resolve.conf, right? We don't want to append it's doing that. So when I change again, you see we have changed the server. So, and another thing we have here, it's mapping domain names with another file called etc host. Because when you are asking this question, first of all it passes through that file, through this file called etc host. It checks, do I have some kind of domain names mapped to any IP, and then if it's not there, it goes to the actual server, maybe Google Cloudflare DNS server, but before it searches from here. So maybe I can map an IP to a domain name. Let me just, for simple example, let me start for like Apache server system cy system ctr start Apache 2. This is a web server which will be running on my locally. So when I check for my IP address, so it's this IP, right? And then from here you see I'll be having this Apache default page, right? But me as a person, I cannot memorize these numbers. That's where we need to map domain name to the IPs. So I can grab this IP and then we go back to the terminal, and then we use nano to edit. We edit our etc hosts, and then we want to map this IP. You see this IP, right, to sergebeny.net, right? Okay, it's easy. Means that every time I write sergebeny.net, it's going to be mapped to this IP. If I save that, and then instead of writing this IP, I can just write sergebeny.net. Yeah, it's same. That's what that file of etc hosts help. Maybe we can use this for simulating some phishings, but this another thing, this etc is locally. You can watch the video I made about how you can set up the DNS resolver over the network. It's in my previous videos, right? So I hope now you understand the Linux networking basics. Every security person needs to know how you can change your IPs, MAC addresses, name servers. Yeah, so you can hit that subscribe button. We meet in the next video as usual. Yeah, ciao ciao.